Alrighty.
Want a phone number?
No, it's email.
Email, Beth. Dot. Gould, Gould. At mail.com.
No.
This is like class 20. All right, we'll sit after. Is that all right? Actually, let's just close eyes for 2 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah. So you were 627.
Just to,
Sorry.
yeah. No, you're fine. I'm glad you're talking. All right. So up nice and tall, shoulders relaxed, jaw relaxed, forehead relaxed. Corners of your eyes, eyelids. And just come to your breath for a few breaths. Maybe count to 10 breaths. Long exhales. All right, so let's just set motivation for being here. Tonight we'll do some really hard emptiness stuff. So whether or not you're able to understand or it makes sense or feel like your brain's melting when you hear, it's coming from karma, coming from seeds. So really good before studying this stuff to just set a proper motivation to try to get all those good seeds in the front of the queue. So bring the mind bodhicitta, the desire to want to get yourself out of suffering so that you can help all other people, people you love, people you feel neutral about, and even the people maybe you don't like so much. That's kind of an all-inclusive thing. And it all has to start with understanding reality, how things are working, understanding emptiness. And it's only possible through that doorway of understanding emptiness to remove your suffering permanently. So just bring to mind maybe particular people that you love and just include them for your reason for being here tonight. Like if the promises of these teachings are to remove all my mental suffering, physical suffering, and become a being that can help countless people, and how cool would that be if I could achieve that or get close to that even? And then think of the good you'd be to the people around you that are suffering from maybe even the things that you used to suffer from 6 months ago or a year ago when we started this, that have shifted for you already. But one of the biggest things as you become awakened and enlightened is that you have this ability to know what other people need. Like it's almost like clairvoyance of sorts, where you know exactly what a person needs to help them move further along this path. So right now we look at somebody that's suffering and we struggle to give them proper advice, or we struggle to relate with them maybe because we really don't know ultimately what they need in that moment. But a Buddha knows exactly what you need and exactly how to help. So how cool would it be to be able to know exactly what my children need or my family needs, and be able to help them get through whatever it is they're going through, and then ultimately remove their own suffering. And so just keep in mind that you're going to listen and you're going to really try to work on diving a little deeper into these things for the people in your life, for the people, other beings around you, and for yourself. Let's come back to breath. 3 breaths. And then open the eyes, come out. Good? Everyone all right? Yeah, so all this, this whole path, this whole biggest goals of these paths to be able to achieve that place of nirvana and even Buddhahood is contingent upon understanding emptiness and having that direct perception that we talked about a lot. Without it, you can't achieve the goals of the Buddhist path and of removing. I hate even referring to the Buddhist path because it makes it feel like it's some sort of. It's like a human path, I think. You know, if you have a human mind, this is the path you need to awaken it and to free yourself of the mental sufferings and the suffering of life. But I don't know. For some, I'm kind of still a little bent from growing up being forced to go to Catholic school. So every time I put a religion of some sort, I feel like it's kind of, it alienates it from some other kind of religion or something. But I think all religions ultimately have the same goal. But it all starts with, and hopefully you kind of get that by now, is this emptiness thing, in some sense that there's something that we're doing that's creating our suffering over and over again, that we're misperceiving the world around us, which creates this, and because we're misperceiving, we're constantly doing the things that are re-perpetuating the sufferings that we're constantly experiencing. And without realizing that, you're just going to keep being in the wheel of life picture, that wheel of life. It's the blind man. It's you can't see what you're doing, so you're never going to be able to fix it. So if you somehow get your sight back, which is understanding emptiness and having that direct perception, ultimately, then you can break that whole cycle of suffering. And what's cool too is, understanding these things, it doesn't come from just wanting to understand it or just studying really hard or all the ways that we think understanding comes typically. I guess those are two ways. It's like, I really want to understand this, so I'm going to really think about it, I'm going to really study it, meditate on it. But ultimately, whether or not you understand these things that could free yourself from suffering is coming from seeds too. And that's cool, because then all you have to do is help other people understand things. And then when you hear these things or things that could help you, then they'll make sense to you. So if you struggle with some of these ideas, just create the causes for understanding it more. And the cause isn't just trying to read more books and trying to, read the books, but you also got to create the cause. It's a delivery system compared to the cause. I always like to think of like, you have to order the package for FedEx to bring you something. It's no good if FedEx just comes, with no package. You can have FedEx come every day, and that's like reading books and trying to study this guy and this guy, go to this talk, that talk, read this book. And it's good to try those things, but if there's no package being delivered, then what's the use? You have to order it, and you order it by helping others. In this case, helping others understand things. And that doesn't mean you have to let them understand these kind of things. Ultimately, these are, of the ultimate sense, most powerful. If you can teach people how to fix their suffering, that's like of the ultimate sense. Of course, teaching people how to work a computer, how to work an iPhone, how to do this or that, that's the causes for you to be able to understand things, and karma grows. So, just helping somebody understand one small thing is probably, it is the cause for you being here, and even being here this long is, as far as weeks now, it's proof that you have the causes to understand this. Otherwise, you probably would come one time and you're like, I don't get any of that stuff, I'm done, and like sometimes in my experience, sometimes I read books and it's just like, oh, it's like too much, and you're like, oh, I can't read this now. It's like my mind's, usually with like the ancient scriptures of these, where all these sutras, where these teachings come from, especially on emptiness. When I read them, they're like I'm getting better now because I've been studying more and I've been, practicing this thing called karma more. But, I've always had to be filtered through a teacher to be able to explain these things to me, because the ancient scriptures were just so almost like in code language, like you have to first learn the code in order to decipher the equation, and teachings on emptiness especially, so it's just good.
Are they still indecipherable or?
No, I mean much. Well, I'll show you some of them tonight because they're parts of what we're going to go over tonight. But yeah, like I'm saying, like the more, and this is cool too, like, because the more you understand emptiness, and because this is ultimately in Buddhist teaching, this is like the pinnacle of teaching of Buddhism, and it's the hardest. So once you understand this, you kind of can get the whole. You can pick up any Buddhist book and kind of start to get what they're talking about. If you kind of understand really the basic tenets of Buddhism, of emptiness, all the other. So there's wisdom. I mean, there's method and wisdom. So wisdom is emptiness side, method is compassion side. So
Say that again. Yes.
there's two. They often call them two wings of a bird. Without the two wings of a bird, you can't fly. So one side is compassion, which is learning the 6 perfections, learning how to be a kind person. Tang Lin practice, giving and taking, all those practices where you're just trying to open your heart more to other people, right? Which is one side of the Buddhist path, and the other side is wisdom, which is understanding emptiness, period. So without them, without emptiness, the compassion thing breaks down once someone starts to push you too far. Someone takes too much advantage of you, then you ultimately will break down if you don't not understanding. Someone is too irritating, then eventually you'll break down and get irritated back at them. It's only it only goes so far to be compassionate while you're still thinking ignorantly about that person that's being irritating or not, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So a person that really understands emptiness, the more someone irritated you, the more excited you would get to like, you're really, there's nothing they can say to budge you from your understanding, which seems impossible almost, Yeah, it seems, but direct perception emptiness is that platform which then you have this part of you that just, that's what you have to do. It's undeniable at that point. Like, there's never been irritating people coming at you. They've always been coming from you. And every time someone was irritating you, you would just be like, yeah, I created you and I want to get rid of you. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I'm not yelling back or irritating you back. And you can push me for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and I'm not going to budge, which seems impossible from a perspective where, let's say, someone never studied or never understood that idea of the irritating person. Because 1 second with an irritating person, people are blabbing back, And then maybe as you're, since we've been talking about this for a few months now, your time gap has gotten a little bit longer from the time you react negatively back from where it used to be. So then that's progress. So eventually it gets longer and longer to the point where it just stops. Where is it going with that? Sorry, mental blank. Blank out. Oh, the two wings. Yeah, right. So then with wisdom, you need the other part, right? The other part, the compassion, is the method. Like, it's not enough just to understand these things. You could be really intellectual and like understand how emptiness works and there's no irritating person, blah, blah. But like, you could just be totally cold-hearted, and not really have concern for other people. It's like that. You gotta have both, because one is creating the causes that's gonna create the result eventually. And the one is like how you're acting in the world. So I guess somebody that really understood emptiness, where things were coming from, I don't know if they could necessarily, like, let's say someone understood that perfectly without like compassion. I guess they would refrain themselves from harming other people in their actions, because they understood that, by me seeing myself do this, I'm recreating the causes. However, I don't know if that would, the compassion part of like wanting to help other people feel that way too. It puts you on that bodhisattva level, that Mahayana level of practice, where you have the compassion, you want to help, you want to achieve the goal so you can help other people. In order to achieve the goal, you have to understand emptiness, and of course, wanting to achieve that as a compassion is the method, and working karma, working through the method of, does that make sense? Sorry. Yeah. So I think I'm talking too much where I'm not making sense anymore. But so just basically, it's the two parts of the practices, wisdom and method. So you have to ultimately, to achieve the goals, you have to understand the wisdom, and there's a lot of teachings, and you see, and like Venerable Amy Miller, I think, is going through like that book, right? The Joy. She just was doing the Joy. So it's a lot about method and being joyful effort. Was last week about last time about ethics, or are they going through like the 6 perfections?
They're going to start that this week.
Okay.
I haven't been there.
Okay.
This was the first week I've been back there.
Yeah.
But they're supposed to start that this week.
Yeah, and you see the Dalai Lama talking a lot about that in public classes. We're just like, we're all in the same boat. Be compassionate towards your fellow person, and stop thinking of like I'm from this country and you're from that country and we're different, and starting to try to like open this compassionate heart towards other people, really working the side of compassion, of the method side. So this is the wisdom side, and we talked about it before, and you kind of really need to hear it a lot of times. And like I said, I think someone asked, like our kind of grandfather, who was like the head of Serme Monastery in Tibet, like he was like the abbot, like out of like, I think it was like a debate between 10,000 monks in Tibet, he was #1, and like, so he came and moved to New Jersey, and then my teacher studied with him for 25 years. And then, so like someone asked him one day that, oh my God, why am I having these mental losses right now? So I keep going off in tangents. but I think that's cool to hear. Like that this stuff. I love to hear when like that this stuff. I just want you to know that I'm not making this stuff up for one. It's coming from an authentic source.
I don't know. We were there.
Yeah.
We said it must be a lie.
One of my coworkers is,
that's
parents call and they're very nasty, and this woman never gets unfurled at all. And she's very calm, and she just says yes, yes. And then she's quiet, and then the other person says, "Are you there? Are you there?" And she says, and she's from India, and she says, "Yes, I am here." And then the person talks some more, and then there's quiet. And it's just such an interesting interaction, and I don't think that we could really come off of it the same way.
Yeah.
But she never gets her feathers.
Mm.
She's just, she's just cool,
Yeah.
calm, and collected as the people are just. And she said that when she first came to this country, she worked for sort of like an Amazon fulfillment place where people were yelling at her all the time, and she realized that it was just a machine in the phone. They weren't yelling at her.
Oh, right.
That there was something wrong with their lives. And so she tells us this, and she's just so sweet.
Yeah.
So when the phone rings, we're like,
It's-
that's your job. The phone's for you.
That's what it was. So someone asked him, how many times do I need to hear teachings on emptiness before I can have this experience that will, really be that pivotal experience in my life? And that's, he said, like 5,000 times. So, you're probably at this point, maybe 12 from me. And if you,
It's more than 12. But
Uh,
you're right, you're right,
Yeah.
I find that too, that
Yeah.
like, the less I come here, like I'm
Yeah.
4 weeks, this week has been like, oh my God,
tough.
like I got into it with people,
Yeah.
and I usually don't, and especially my husband, and, I caught myself this time, but, I was going to react,
Yeah.
but 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, it didn't matter what he said. I
Yeah,
wasn't
right.
reacting.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I need to come back.
Yeah.
And I was so mad I couldn't come back, but you need
Yeah.
to hear it over and over till it's like, oh yeah, like with my dad yesterday with the piece of trash.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
I gotta focus back on what I'm doing. Because I was focused on myself, and I was trying to find out why these things are happening,
Yeah.
like in my life, and like you said, you get what you
Yeah.
get back.
Yeah.
And start to see where I was doing things. But this week it's been a real challenge.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of things for people.
Right.
And like you were saying, then I was getting annoyed because I
Yeah.
was like, why am I doing all this?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, I lost the compassion part because they needed and I needed to be it. But
Right.
again, it's
Yeah.
like, and then,
And just on that, because it's something that I've just today and this past few days I've been dealing with. So my sister-in-law, she's, let's just say Lauren doesn't like her very much, and her choices that she makes in her life. So she called me, like I work on cars and like I can fix cars fairly easily and save a lot of money from going to a mechanic. She knows that. We rarely talk to her, but she calls, recently and says, hey, the mechanic says it's going to cost $1,800 to fix my car, like, does this seem right for you? Does this seem right to you? Like what he wants done and the pricing. And so I looked up all the parts and I said, I can get the parts for probably $500, all the parts for $500. And, the labor, $1,300 for labor seems a lot if it would take me maybe a half a day to do. I mean, it's just a mechanic, they have to make a living. So I was like, I can order the parts and just do it if you want. And like, from Lauren's perspective, she knew what her sister was just trying to manipulate me to get me to do it. Because she knows that I would do it,
oh, it's Lauren's sister.
It's Lauren's sister, yeah. So, so Lauren's pissed at me in the sense that I did it, and I paid for the parts for her, because I have the extra money, and she doesn't have any money. She's raising a daughter that's 16, and a single parent. It's just like she has struggles that Lauren sometimes it's hard for her to see past. Even regarding her decisions, she's just a little misguided in life, I believe. So, I told her I was like, I have the extra money. I'll just pay for the parts. I'll fix it. So it was done. And she's mad at me. She's like, you were just manipulated by her, and I'm like, okay, if you want to feel like I'm manipulated by her, fine. I said, but on a different level, like for me, this is the mess that I've created, understanding, karma and understanding emptiness. Why do I see somebody in my life that's, one, struggling, in the way that she is, two, needs, someone's possibly taking advantage of her, like money-wise. She doesn't have any money. She works her ass off. And, they want to charge her $1,300 in labor for probably half a day of work. It just seems like a lot. So thinking about it wisely, it's like, I can have, even if she was manipulating me, if that's what her true intentions were, I'm not saying it was or it wasn't, it doesn't matter, because for me, it's part of my work for purifying my world. This is the practice. It's like, if I want to stop seeing people manipulate other people, and I want to see, people have more, and people be more open to helping other people and stop taking advantage of people, then it's got to kind of start with me ultimately. If this path is true and those ideas are true, then there's a reason I'm seeing people taking advantage of other people, etc. So let me go out of my way mindfully, because, so wisdom side is, let me go out of my way because I'm going to be a scientist about it. I'm going to say, karmically, I know that I have to do this in order to remove this from my life, right? That's the wisdom side. And can I add some of the compassion side in there and be like, yeah, well, she doesn't have the money. She struggles. She's a single parent, she's just misguided in life. So what's it hurt? What's it hurt? I had the extra, it wasn't like a big deal. So I did it, but like it's that struggle, because the untrained mind, so to speak, would say she's just taking advantage. Don't help her, and that's kind of the resistance I have coming from Lauren. And I'm like, it doesn't cost much for me to help her. It took me like a half a day to do, and it's done. And for me, I can dedicate all those efforts to seeing that no longer part of my world. I don't want to see people being taken advantage of. I don't want to see people struggling to make ends meet. And and we'll get into it more tonight, but if this stuff is true, then that's how I remove it. That's how I start to purify my world, is by my actions then are going to change my perception of the world, which will then change the world for me, right? So, with wisdom, you can, of course you don't want to let people take advantage of you.
That was my question, is where do you draw the line then? Because like if she comes back to you next month and says, oh, I need this fixed now, do you say?
All right, so it's kind of what I just said.
That's my issue.
So that's the compassion side talking, right? It's like, I want to help her, but where do I draw the line? Like there's only so many times, like it's like the irritating person. I want to be patient, but they come to me 10 times, I'm going to say, get irritated back. Wisdom side says there is no person out there on their own deciding to take advantage of me, separate from my perception of somebody deciding to take advantage of me, right? And it's my crap. So if I want to purify it, so it's not to say that you let people take advantage of you, but I don't know what her true intentions are. What I see somebody that this is just misguided for one in life. She just doesn't have, and she's alone, she's like just had a fiance die, and she was divorced, and like the father of her child died, so she's got a lot of crap in her life, and she's like, struggles in life. So I can get more in touch with that and more relate in that compassion side. But yeah, if I know that somebody is outwardly taking advantage of me, what do I do? Do I help or do I not? I would say help, but also look into your life and see where you're taking advantage of people. And don't, we have this habit of always looking for reasons not to help. Like when you see the homeless person or something on the street, and you come up with all these scenarios of like why not to give them money, But ultimately, he's your problem. You put him there. Your karma put him there. Without the karma, you have the karma of seeing poverty in the world because of your stinginess in the past. So the best thing you could do would be to give. If it's going to harm them, of course, you don't do it. Like if they're going to go buy some drugs or alcohol with it, you don't do it. But if you're just coming up with these stories of all these things that could be possible, and they're just ripping off, and 2020 did a story on these people, and they're not really poor, like all these things that we hear, that they're just faking and they're just lazy, get rid of all those storylines. And what do you see? You see somebody that needs, help, so they're there for you to help yourself and to help your world. Ultimately, understanding this path is that every opportunity you have in your world is a I just heard in a movie today. It was really cool. And the basic gist of it is like every opportunity that you have it's like a doorway into your creating your future. You know, you can either go the way that you've always gone, maybe, and that's, you know, doing a negative thing or just disregarding that thing or not helping, or you can create the karma, the future for yourself of removing that type of thing from your world. But that requires deep wisdom. You know, deep wisdom is understanding emptiness, where they're coming from, and how they're not out there on their own, coming from their own side by themselves, separate from you. Yeah. So it always kind of has to come back to that. Otherwise, you can get really easily can kind of get behind, I'm not going to help them. You know, it's easy to do that. It's hard to say I'm going to help them, but with wisdom. You got to do it with wisdom. So if I know she's taking advantage of me, there's always you know, my teacher always says there's always kind of like a third option, you know. It's not always so black and white. Do I do this or do I do that? You know, do I help her or do I not help her? So the best advice would be to work on the karma of what that is that you're seeing. So if you're seeing someone take advantage of you, get really clear about how I'm taking advantage of people. Say, okay, you know, I'll get back to you in a few days. You know, I'll let you know if I can help you. But in the meantime, I'm going to work on, you know, where am I taking advantage of people in small ways, and I fix that. And then, you know, I would say even help. What I would do is that's the real thing. You know, where is that coming from? Where am I seeing somebody take advantage of somebody? Where's that coming from? Because she could very well not be taking advantage and really need it, right? But I'm applying that label and that perception of that in my world.
And also, like Lauren's doing that too. She's putting it on you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Right.
She's mad now.
Yeah.
But, and then that kind of goes with me. My husband says, "You're helping everybody. You do too much. You're always helping everybody." And it's because I'm probably not helping him.
Right.
Because I don't mind helping the people I'm helping.
Yeah.
But he gets annoyed because I'm not paying attention to him.
I get that.
You know, and I think that's part of it. Is why when I said taking advantage, like being taken advantage of, and I don't mind helping them.
Yeah.
But I hear, why are you always running around? You know, like this morning I drove to the shore.
Yeah.
Put all the furniture in my dad's assisted living place. Came home and I've been at my dad's apartment 3 times already. I haven't sat down all day. Yeah. But I'm here and I want to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a noble way to live your life.
He called me and he was like, I said, I drove into my driveway at 7:20 and I was like, oh crap, I'm not going home, I'm going to meditation. And he's like, where are you? You know, and I was like, I'm going to meditation. And he's like, well, you've been running all day. I'm like, yeah. So that's what I guess it's
so you try, you know,
it's their stuff that they're trying to put on you.
Sure, yeah, they'll have a perception of that person that's maybe separate from yours. You know, that person, see, the thing is that person doesn't exist that way from their own side. It's the irritating person. There is no irritating person coming at you. So if you have someone,
sounds
sure.
He's so racist, and we have these conversations all the time, and he does it to get on my nerves because it's horrible. And so now I'm like, sounds familiar. Okay, hon. Yeah, whatever, hon. Yep. You know, but this last week it's like, what do you mean? You know.
What about like quantity? I mean, here we give some personal examples. One of my neighbors, who I knew from the time I was little, borrowed money. It was $20,000. It was not money. And he needed it right then and there, and he was desperate. And I said, sure. Did I go to a lawyer and have him sign anything? No. I've known him. I knew his parents. And a year went by, 2 years went by, 3 years went by. And I said, look, I'm helping my niece with school. Can I have? I'll give you a little bit. And I never got any. And then he moved. And so there's like a quantity too. I mean, I don't mean to say I wouldn't have minded if it was 1,000. But the 20,000, it's still like, oh, I want to kill him. So you know, I wrote to his aunts and I said, look, you know, kind of. So is there like a level of quantity? You know what I'm saying?
It comes down to you don't want to allow somebody else to collect bad karma. Is your goal. So if let's say you're not sure if someone's taking advantage of you or not. But they need your help, and they're asking you for your help. So you help, and you try to do it with wisdom. You try to do it with kindness. And if they come back and you found out they're just kind of hitting a watering hole, taking advantage, and they never paid you back for the last one, then you know that by you giving them money, they're in fact they're creating the seeds for themselves to see themselves stealing from somebody, which is going to create less of what they want in their life, right? So the kindest thing you could do for them at that point would not to give. You know what I'm saying? But if it's always directed towards what they want and get yourself out of the way, then it becomes a different act. You know, you can say, I'm not going to help you because, you know, I just don't have that. I don't want to give you that money because you're annoying me or something like that. Or you can say, well, in the back of your mind, you know that I'm just allowing this person to perpetuate this cycle that they're stuck in of stealing off of people and never having enough because they're not going to, they have no intention of paying me back. Never did. So out of the kindness of my heart, I'm going to say no, right? It's a different thing. But like Bodhisattva, like there's, like in the Bodhisattva, the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, which is like one of the big texts in Buddhism by Master Shantideva. And I believe this is from there. I'm terrible. I got a terrible memory, but I remember quotes. I just don't remember where they come from. But the idea is that a bodhisattva, if somebody asked for, you know, your arm, they would cut their arm off and give it to you, or asked you for. There's a story of someone asking for the eyeball of a bodhisattva, and they ripped out their eyeball and gave it to them. I mean, that's just, you know, it's that intention that, you know, whatever I can do for you, getting yourself out of the way, if you really need that or whatever. On the other hand, and then they say, you got to work at the level that you're at. So you start with giving away fruits and vegetables, you know, because you're not going to miss a fruit or vegetable. But ultimately, you're working to give your arm, you know, or your liver, or, you know, if somebody needed it, you would give that because, but that's going to be, you know, if you can't do that with wisdom and without any regret, then you don't do it.
Well, the justification that I had in my mind was I had the rest of my life starting when he was the rest of his life to think about what he did. But I mean, that's just me thinking it. Like I thought, okay, I can kind of now put it on the back burner and not even be, not even react when I, you know.
Well, it's important never to have regret for what you're doing because the regret just destroys all the good karma. So like there's stories of Ken Rinpoche. He's the abbot that is my teacher's teacher. So people would come to him and just give him his house, their houses, car. You know, like someone came and gave her the keys to the house and the deed to his house, and he refused to take it. You know. Because he knew that that person would regret it in the week following, or the week, you know, which would just destroy all the good karma of doing it. So at least he gets the good karma of having the intention of wanting to give, but because he knew that that student would regret it, then he didn't accept it, you know, because regret's really dangerous, especially for good deeds, you know, because if you go and give, you know, if I go and help her with her car and spend $500 on, you know, parts, and then, you know, next week I'm pissed that I did it, then I just want to destroy all that goodness that I spent all the time creating. So here's how you protect all your goodness. Dedicate it to achieving the goal. Dedicate it to achieve enlightenment ASAP for the sake of all living beings. Bodhicitta. That protects it. That puts it out there and distributes your wealth in the bank of everybody. You know what I mean? That becomes an infinite karma. If every act you're doing becomes infused with, I am doing this so I can achieve these goals of removing my suffering forever so I can help other people, right? Then it becomes this infinite goal. All living beings is part of that goal. It's like, if I can achieve this goal, then I will then have the capacity to help all beings. So then it's no longer, I'm just doing this so I can get my car to work better next week or something, you know? Like, will that happen? Yeah, I'll have transportation. I won't have problems with cars. You know, the karma of helping somebody with their car would be, you know, I would have no problem with transportation in the future. However, and being generous with money, etc. But if I can dedicate that action to being a cause for me to achieve these goals quicker, and then it kind of throws it into this, the bank of all beings in a sense, and you protect that karma. Because in that same book, The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, one moment of anger destroys, I think it's like something like 500 eons of good karma that you've collected. So one moment of anger you have in your day has the power to destroy goodness that you did for this whole life at least, you know? It's really daunting, you know, but you can protect it by dedicating it. So every action then, you know, even brushing your teeth, I'm doing this so, you know, I don't have brown teeth so when people would listen to me and they're not just staring at my teeth the whole time, you know? Or, you know, I'm drinking this water so I could be hydrated, so I could, you know, be healthy, right? And like everything can then have that motivation. I'm getting dressed today, so, you know, like I could look presentable to the people that I need to help in this, you know, throughout my day. And then everything becomes like a cause for, you know, pushing you faster along this path, which is cool.
It really just keeps you mindful of everything that you're doing.
And it protects it, which is important. And we didn't really talk about that yet, but that's a really important piece. Because one moment could just wipe out all the efforts, which is really depressing. So you know, you gotta really get at the anger, and you know, anger is the most poisonous affliction that we have. You know, one of the most poisonous.
Oh, this is off again, but the guy that was at the post office when Ron went to the post office was all excited. He got this new little car, but he was very small, and he said he drives on Roosevelt Boulevard all the time when he lives, and he was a little worried about it till his neighbor, who's from Haiti, gave him this protection for his car. I said, "What is it?" And it was just like a little wooden cube, right? And he had it in his pocket. And I said, "That's going to protect you." She said, "Oh yes." She told me that this will protect me. And I said, "Oh, good." And I see him a couple of times a week. He said, "So I drive carefully, but I have like
A force field?
protection." I'm, "Oh my God, this is little teeny car. He's 3 kids. Car seats in the car. His 3 kids." And I'm thinking, it's a little teeny car to be driving. But so I thought, well, you know, if you think it's going to protect you, it will protect you. That's one thing. I don't know. I was thinking of.
There's some validity in that, other than minus
Safe drive,
the karma stuff, you know? So it's like the law of attraction. You can want something really bad, but it doesn't mean it's going to come, you know? It's if you are kind to other people and you help other people be safe and you protect other people's life, then you will be safe. You know what I mean? Because that's the karma that then if I want to be safe and I could just believe that this, you know, is my lucky mug. Every time I carry this mug, you know, in my mind, I'm having the intention this is keeping me safe. That gives room for the karma to come and ripen for me, and that I'll be protected. But this thing has no power in and of itself, nor does the wooden block, nor does the irritating person or the pen, right? They're empty, you know? So
Just careful driving.
yeah, it's just careful driving, yeah. So if it makes him become a more careful driver, then I guess it is creating the causes that will help him be a safer person, or a health, I don't know, safer person, less prone to accident person. All right, let's do some of this so we can get some done. So there's this thing that first, when you're doing emptiness kind of meditations and debates and intellectual exercises, you have to first identify the thing, the object that we're denying. So, oh my God, this is really funny. I don't think I have a pen.
I have an F1.
Do you?
I have an F1.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You all right, Mary?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Oh,
check in.
you plug in?
Too hot, my plug in.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. So we need to identify the object we deny. And this is called a gotcha in Tibetan, gotcha. And it kind of sounds like what it means, gotcha, like gotcha. It's the thing that we think is there that's not there, that never was there and never could be there. So it's the irritating person that was coming at you because that's who they were, right? It's the thing, or it's like another way to think about it is like, that's a pretty good way.
Yeah.
The irritating person that's out there on their own by themselves, deciding to be irritating because that's their essence, that's their nature. It's the thing that we're going to deny when we start thinking about emptiness and how they really exist. So we're going and the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life states that until you can find what you thought was there, you can never grasp to how it cannot exist. Right? So the irritating person that you thought was there, out there on their own by themselves, you need to like first realize that that's the way you think about it, that person, in order to realize that that way of existing for that being is impossible, right? That in order to realize that they're in fact coming from you and not at you. Like you first got to see what you're doing wrong and realize how you're doing it wrong. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
We'll get more into it, but so here's the definition. It's any object of the mind that could exist on its own side through its unique way of being, without its existence having to be established by the fact of it happening to a state of mind that is unimpaired or not impaired. So a state of mind that is any object of the mind that could exist on its own side through its own unique way of being. The irritating person that exists on his own, self-existently, hardwired that way, on his own unique way of being, without its existence having to be established by the fact of it appearing to a state of mind that's not impaired. So the state of mind that's not impaired just means that you're not, under the influence of like some drug or having some hallucination. Or there's one other thing that usually comes up, this misperception that we have of like when you're on a train and the other train starts to move and you feel like you're moving, that kind of misperception. They often refer to that when they're talking about an impaired mind, in a sense, a misperception. One second. Where's my mouse? So basically, it means it can't exist out there on its own. That's kind of what this thing is. So there's data out there that suggests something to my mind when it's not impaired, not on drugs. So that's when unimpaired mind meets objects, then objects exist. Is the idea we're getting at. So without its existence having to be established by the fact of it appearing to the state of mind that's not impaired. So this is like your mind that an irritating person that could exist without your mind labeling them as an irritating person. Does that make sense? That the label irritating person is coming from you and is not part of them. So that's the thing that could exist without your mind having something to do with it. That's the gotcha that we're talking about. Does that make sense, Scott? Okay. So, and just a little disclaimer, like this stuff is hard. So I'll try my best to, transfer as much as I understand about it. But they always say too that someone that hasn't seen emptiness directly, their description is in some sense ultimately flawed of emptiness. But you can kind of still try to wrap your head around it. So disclaimer is that I'm still working on this myself, but this is the stuff that makes sense to me, and that's all. So then there's like different schools of how things exist, and we'll just kind of briefly go over this one. So this is like a specific Tibetan Buddhist school, Madhyamika Svachantrika school. And basically they say object does not exist until it meets the mind. So the only way we know things exist, it is through perceiving them with a mind, right? So when there's some irritating person in your world, right? There's a person out there. There's some data out there. There's some noises, some shapes, some colors that are coming from them. 50% in them, and then the label irritation, 50% from you. So until those 50% come together and make 100%, there is no irritating person, right? Without the mind that is creating a label, and without the data, there's nowhere to put the label. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You need the data in order to label it. You need the label.
Right.
You got it, okay. So it's 50-50, so data in mind. So then they say, like, otherwise you could just make up, like, if it wasn't like 50% of this object's existence was coming from it, so there's a cylinder out here, some colors, some shapes, right? Some colors and shapes, and then the label pen comes into my mind and meets these shapes and colors. So I have a label, a seed in my mind for pen, and then there's this object out here, a tube, right, cylindrical thing, data out here, mind, label, together they create pen. So basically that's saying that without the label, there is no pen, right? Got that. So otherwise you would just be able to like make up magic markers or pens everywhere, anywhere you want it. Like, oh, pen there, pen, like if there had to do with some data out there, you'd just be able to impute pen, and it would just be everywhere. So 50-50, got that, okay. So when they meet, we have an object and not until. So then this is a magic show example. I remember Sandy, you asked me about this. Remember?
Yes.
Okay. So there's an example of, I guess back in India, in India, basically there's groups of people that would gather around and magicians would do tricks, right? So the story is basically a group gathers around a magician and he shows people a stick. And then he recites some magic words and throws some powder into the air, and then he changes the stick into a horse. So then we come to this. This is like a metaphor for like perception of the actual object that was changed into the horse, and a metaphor for how we're perceiving reality and the different people involved in the scene. So for one, so okay, so the group is gathered, and then at the last moment, someone walks up and walks into the crowd. Didn't get the magic magic words, didn't see the magic potion, and they just see everyone up there with a stick. The people gathered around, they see a horse, right? Because the magic spell went off, and they are now perceiving a horse, and they're believing there's a horse there. They're all like, taken back with it. And the magician, he sees a horse, but knows it's really a pen, right? Because he did the magic trick. He converted, or the stick. He converted the stick into the horse, but he knows it's just an illusion because he's a magician. The person that just walked in just sees a magician holding a stick, and everybody like going crazy. So those three different perspectives of what we're going to investigate a little bit. A magician sees a horse but knows it's a stick, right? That's important. So he knows it can't exist in that way. He knows it really can't be a horse because he knows that he's seeing a horse right now, but he knows the true nature of this thing is a pen. So this is a metaphor for someone who's had the direct perception of emptiness, an aria. So they see the irritating person as out there coming at them, but they know it's wrong. They know it's coming from the label coming from their mind, right? They still see it as coming at. So it's like they're like the horse. He's the magician perceiving the irritating person, which was called the horse, right? But knows the horse is really just a stick, because he's the aria. So he's the aria because he knows that there is no irritating person self-existently out there on their own coming at me. So, but he still sees it wrong. Right? That makes sense. So he still sees it as coming at them. That doesn't change when you have direct perception. You just intellectually know that you're wrong. And so we're like the audience. We're the audience. We think there's a horse there, right? We see irritating person and we take it to be an irritating person. We think that there's an irritating person coming at us, right? We see irritating person and we think irritating person is coming at us, and then we relate to them as they're out there coming at us. So we're like the audience. And then the stranger coming in, doesn't see the horse at all. He's like an aria in the direct perception of emptiness. They see the way things truly are. So they're not seeing a horse. They're just seeing the true nature of the thing. So it's just a metaphor. So basically, stranger sees stick, the true nature of things. Magician sees horse, knows it's a stick. Audience sees horse, thinks it's a horse. So it was just an example in this text. All right, so then we are 5 proofs of emptiness according to the Madhyamika Prasangika school. Madhyamika Prasangika. I believe it translates to higher. No, I don't know. I don't want to say that wrong. I forget. It's middle. I believe it's middle way school, but Madhya means higher. Mika, I don't know. But anywho, this is the highest school of Tibetan Buddhism. So I said that already. Okay. So then we get into kind of these emptiness proofs. So the first one is the emptiness of one and many. And I think we kind of did this a little bit before. So here's the argument for the emptiness of one and many. So in order to stop our suffering, we need to understand how we're misperceiving things. And these are all exercises in getting to the root of how we're misperceiving. So consider a pen. It does not really exist. Really exist means out there on its own by itself. Don't think it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We're not saying it doesn't. Really just means self-existently hardwired. Irritating person that exists out there coming at you. For it is neither as one thing which really exists, nor as many things which really exist. So this is from the Analysis of Perfection of Wisdom, Kedru Denpa Darge, 1493. Okay, so basically we can pick any object for this proof. We'll use a pen. And first thing we have to establish is a complete set. So the complete set here we're calling is one thing or many things, right? Something either has to be one thing or it has to be many things. And there's no other choice, right? So you have to establish that there's no other choice in your mind. Is there another choice? If this chair is one, if this chair existed, it would have to either be one thing or many things. Yes or no? Got that. There's no other choice. So you really got to make these firm. You have another choice? Okay. So it's really important in these. You got to decide with your mind, because your mind will want to weasel its way out. and say, oh, no, and fight you. But you have to establish, if this thing exists the way that I think it does, it has to be one thing or many things. And you have to really get that clear. Okay, so then we'll use chair because it's right here. So let's investigate for it exists neither as one thing, which really exists. So is this one thing? Is chair one thing?
It could be.
So is it one thing?
It appears to me
Of course,
it's
it's a chair.
One chair.
There's a one chair,
One
right?
chair.
There's a chair, right? So if it's one thing, then how could it have parts? It couldn't have parts. If it was truly one thing out there on its own, it couldn't have parts, right? Logically, if it's one thing, it can't have parts. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So does this thing have parts? Okay. So then it's many things. Okay. So you're saying there's many chairs here.
That's a concept.
All right. So there's
One chair.
there's one chair, but with many parts. But if it existed the way we think it exists, it would either have to be one or many. It couldn't be both. So it had to be one chair, or it had to be many chairs. So if it's one chair, it can't have parts. If it's many, it can't be one. So there's a problem, right? So this is what we got. Like this is these things start to investigate the problem. Like because we don't without unanalyzed, we'll never like come to that realization. So how this exists is our minds are grouping together those many parts and gluing them together and labeling them as one chair. But there is no one chair here, right? It's just parts. There's never been one chair here on its own by itself, right? Self-existently. There is a chair here, right? So this is middle way. It's not that it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist the way you thought it did. Like we think that there's one chair out there on its own coming at you. It's just out here. We left the room. It would still be there, one chair. But if it was one chair, it couldn't have parts. And if it has parts, how can it be one? You know, it's a logical, it's like an impossibility. And so you need to analyze these things and to realize that, okay, out there it can't be one and out there it can't be many. So where is the oneness of the chair coming from? It has to be coming from me. It's a concept. So there is no one chair there, separate from the concept gluing these parts together and labeling them chair. And until your mind glues them together and labels those parts as chair, there is no chair for you. And there is no chair. There's never been chair. Never will be chair out there on its own coming. Because if there was, it would have to be one or many. So you got to keep going back and forth in these arguments with yourself. These are really good meditations. Because you say, okay, yeah, of course there's one chair. Yeah. And then you go, oh, okay, well, no. If it was one, then it can't have parts. And then you go, okay, well, yeah, of course it has parts, but it's one chair. But you've got to logically decide that if it existed the way that I think it does, it would have to be one of those. It would have to be either one or either many. And if it's neither one of those, then it can't exist the way that I think it does. It can't.
Doesn't that go to everything then?
Yeah, so you can pick any object then, any object.
And that
So
goes
pen.
back to empty.
This is empty. So this thing is empty. There is no chair out there coming at us, right? It's empty. These parts are empty of having any chairness until your mind glues them together and labels chair onto them. Got that? So it's just parts that your mind is, and you really like, so what's that say about that thing? It's like that, because the gotcha, going back to the gotcha is the chair that you think is out here coming at you. Unanalyzed, that thing looks like it's coming at, like there is a chair there. Of course there's a chair there, right? Unanalyzed, it seems like it's out there on its own, just waiting for me to come sit on it. Under analyzation, through meditation, you had to say, oh, it had to be one or many. If it's not one or many, then it can't exist the way that I think it does. So it has to be, my mind has to be gluing these many pieces together and labeling them as one chair. And chair is just a concept that's coming from me, throwing it out there on those parts, and then I have chair, and it exists, and I can sit on it, and I could stand on it, and I could fold it up, right? So anybody that thinks that there's not a chair here now, then try to sit on it, and we'll prove that there's a chair there. You know, the proof that there's a chair there is that you can sit on it. How it's there is different. So you can't go thinking that there's no chair here, because I didn't say that chairs don't exist. Chairs do exist. They just don't exist the way you think they do. And the way you think they do creates all your suffering, is the problem. So if you can get to the root of that, and you can understand that the reason that there's a chair here available for your comfort if you decide you need it, an extra chair here, because you had given people comfortable places to sit and to stay in the past, And that's why my mind glues those parts together as a chair. Because if I didn't have those seeds, you would not perceive chair. If I didn't have created comfortable places for people to stay in the past, then literally everywhere I sat would be like a hard ground. I'd be like, oh my God, it's so uncomfortable, you know? Like whether you find that chair comfortable or, I think in, the things that are most common in our society, our karma is so like perfected around those practices of like taking care of people that they seem like almost commonplace. Like chair, hard to think that what it would be like without chairs, like because they're so common, right? But I think our karma is so good that just chairs are just so everywhere. You know, I mean, we've taken care of people greatly in the past, so we have, think of that. I want to perceive a chair. There's a chair, and there's probably 10 chairs everywhere you go in this world. But in this country at least, let's say you go to India or something. There's a lot of places that don't have chairs, and they're sitting on the floors, and maybe it's not so comfortable. There's a chair there that you created by taking care of other people's comfort needs in the past. And that's the chair that doesn't exist there. The chair that doesn't exist is the one that's out there because that's what it is. That was made in a factory. Like we think this thing is here because it was made in a factory. Someone put the parts on it, someone upholstered it, someone, forged the metal. That kind of chair doesn't exist. There's a chair there that exists for you because of the seeds that your mind's putting those things together based on, taking care of people in the past. And that's hard because we're the audience looking at the chair, thinking the chair's a chair. We don't understand the true nature of the chair, that it's coming from us. Because it's deceiving us. We have the magic spell on us all the time, and that's ignorance. We're constantly in this magic spell, and that's what creates all of our suffering. So you got that one?
Yeah.
That's pretty much the most important one to like. What's that?
It's kind of like pen on the
It is pen. So parts, yeah. This is one or many, one pen, but okay, well, it has all these parts. Well, so it's many pens, no? But you can even say about me, am I one or many? So Mark, is Mark one or many? Of course it's one Mark, right? I'm right here. But if I have many parts, I have at least a body and mind, we could say that, right? I'm a body and mind. So, okay, then I guess I'm many. Well, no, there's not many Marks here, So which one am I, I'm neither from my own side. I'm a conception that a mind, it requires a synthesis of a mind gluing parts together, always. So there is no independent self-existent Mark. There's no independent self-existent, say your name to yourself. It's just your mind gluing those parts together and labeling them based on your karma. So that's the good news, because if it's not hardwired, then you can change it. And that's where it's important for self, is like, if I was hardwired suffering being stuck in samsara and stuck with these mental afflictions and etc., then there would be no escaping, and this perpetual suffering would just infinitely go on, because that's who you were.
I work with two blind people, and it's kind of like you have to explain to them what a thing is or what a color is.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same. Yeah. It doesn't exist in their mind.
Yeah. They don't have the same experience.
They don't have the same experience.
Yeah. At all.
I mean, just when you thought about it, I was thinking about like polka dots.
Yeah, they might have some, they could probably make a mental map of it.
But we talk about like polka dots and stripes and matching, and I don't know, it's just the whole thing. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, right.
It's all, what we think goes together and doesn't go together.
This is just a weird thing that happened to me. I was telling you guys I had cataract surgery last week.
Yeah.
And before that, if I covered my eye, everything was completely gray. And I got the surgery and I went like this, and everything was so bright and clear. But I went like this, and the good eye, everything was like tinged green.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, I've been looking at everything so differently.
That's cool.
And I thought I was like seeing great. And this eye who now has to get done, everything has like this green filter on it. And and I can see so clearly now out of this eye.
Yeah.
It's kind of a metaphor.
No, that's a good emptiness thing, because
it's such a weird thing, because I kept driving home going, wow, that's weird. It was like I had an LED light coming out this side, and everything was bright blue, and then I go like this, and everything was like just a weird green, right? Even the leaves and all. It was just like a weird.
Well, if both eyes were like that, you would see the whole world in green. And let's say you never, but you would think the world was green. Like you would think everything was green.
And that's what you were seeing. And well, and this eye, everything was completely blurry in the last year. And I was like, and this I was doing all the work. And I thought I was seeing so great with this eye.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, wow, that's even now that's like a blue or brighter, and that's like a green tinge. I can't wait till next
Yeah.
week. to see it. But it's just such a strange thing when I was like
Your perception.
that's so awesome. Right.
Yeah.
It was like new perception.
Yeah.
What I was thinking, everything
That's
was
cool.
so great. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't really seeing it.
Yeah, there's a meditation where you kind of like visualize that you're putting on like these rose-colored glasses where everything is tinted like rose, and then you're misperceiving the world. It's like a sign for your ignorance, like where you don't see that you're looking through these lenses that are tinted already. You're thinking that chairs are out there and pens are out there and irritating people are out there coming at you. And then you put on the diamond glasses. The diamond glasses are wisdom, you know, and you see that, okay, that it's just a label coming from my mind that I throw out there onto those parts, you know? So yeah, it's kind of interesting to get little hints, like you kind of poke behind the curtain a little bit when you see, oh, what do you mean? That wasn't green this whole time? It was my eye, you know? So you all got that?
But it's kind of see thing.
That one?
You know, even like with habit energy, sometimes it's hard. Like when I do Tai Chi Chuan, we went to this conference and we learned how to do this move a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So every time I do it, I was like, you know, you're so used to doing it one way.
Yeah.
Just even have to change up a little.
Yeah.
Like in a daily routine, it gets to be a little
Yeah.
tricky,
Yeah.
right? Because you think, I don't know. Am I making sense that it's anytime you have to adjust or alter or change
Yeah.
a habit
Yeah.
or something, or the thing that you do, or, you know, like all of a sudden using your left hand to brush your teeth versus your right hand.
Yeah.
You have to stop and think and, I don't know,
Yeah.
changes it up.
Yeah.
Then ultimate results the same. Try and get it from the teeth.
All right, let's do a meditation. We got 4 minutes. I just want to give you a meditation. This is like, we'll do this in a meditation, but really it's most powerful kind of meditation you can do. Particularly this one, using emptiness. You all right to go a few minutes after?
Yeah.
Is that fine? Yeah. If you have to go, you can sneak out. Okay. So up tall. Again, relax shoulders, face. Come to your breath. Take a few breaths. All right, so we'll work on that, what we just did. So bring to mind the chair. See a chair in your mind. And we're going to analyze how this thing exists or doesn't exist. So first we determine the two possibilities of being, ways that this thing could exist if it existed the way we think it did. If it existed out here on its own, by itself through some nature of its own, then it would have to be either one or many. So just go through and just try to conclude in your mind that that's pretty much all. If something exists, it either had to be one thing or many things. There's not like some other choice. So if the chair existed, it would have to be one or many. And if it doesn't fit into one of those categories, then you have to determine that it can't exist then. That there's something wrong. So first see chair how you normally see, just out here on its own, by itself. Like the chair that's here, when you leave, it'll still be here sitting here. And then we'll investigate the first. So if chair existed the way we think it does, then it would have to be one thing. Is it one thing? So we say one chair. Of course, there's one chair there. We're seeing one chair. But if it were one, what would that mean? It couldn't have any parts. If something was one, it couldn't be multiple. Those two things are mutually exclusive, either one or multiple. So if it were one chair, then it couldn't have parts. And just wrestle with your mind about that for a moment. If it were one, it couldn't have any parts. So then I guess it's many, because it has many parts. There's a leg, the back, the seat, the cushion, the feet. So then I guess it's many parts. I mean, it's many. So then we think, okay, is it many chairs? Then there's a problem there. It's not many chairs. It's one chair. So go back and forth in those two categories, one or many. Is the chair one or is it many? If it was one, it couldn't have any parts. And if it has parts, then it can't be one. There's nowhere for it to hide. There's no place left for it. And we said if it existed the way we think it did, then it would have to be either one of those two. So then you can determine that it can't exist the way we think it does. Because it's neither one nor many from its own side. And so then think, how is it one? How, because there is one chair, but how it's one is different from how we think it's one. And then my mind is taking the parts of chair and putting them together, and then is labeling them as one chair. But there's nothing about that chair out there that's one. Just a bunch of parts. And the oneness is coming from my mind. Chair is coming from my mind. It's a label, a concept. And then here's the important part of an emptiness meditation. So that's what they call dependent origination. And that's just a fancy way to say is arising in my mind. The chair is dependent upon my mind, arising that label of chair. What is the emptiness of the chair? And so this is, in emptiness meditations, you do the analyzation to determine that, okay, there can't be a chair out there the way that I think there is. It's just a label arising in my mind that I'm throwing out there onto the parts. So then what happens when I remove the label chair from my mind? Let's just dissolve the concept chair from your mind and think what's left out there now. And you should get to a lack of something, an emptiness. And try to rest in that realization that kind of pops. And you kind of keep going back. You kind of come back to, okay, it's not one or many. It's a label that I'm gluing together, throwing out there onto those parts. And what happens if I remove the label? What happens to chair? What are you left with out there? And try to get that, have that realization. It should be a lack. You should feel like a lack of something, like something's missing. The chair that you thought that was there, that wasn't, never there. It can't be there. And then every time your mind starts to slip out, this emptiness is very slippery. To rest your mind on it, it's like a slippery fish. You grab it for a second, then it slips out, and then you have to go back and reanalyze. And in these meditations, you're trying to lengthen your stay in that realization. So every time the mind slips away, then come back. Is it one or many? It's neither of those two. And it has to be an idea, that a concept that I'm gluing together and giving it the idea of one chair. It's coming from my mind. I drop the label. What's there? We'll just stay with that for a minute. So, what's there without the label? All right, good. And then come back to your breath. And then when you're ready, open your eyes, come out. Stretch. Got that? That makes sense? All of it?
All of it.
So, again, no one's saying there's no chair there, right? We got that. Super, super, super important. It's very fine line, you know? You can easily slip into thinking there's no chair. Oh my God, I guess I'm just living in my head or something. We're not saying that. You know, that's the nihilistic. That's the one fall, the cliff. The other fall is thinking that things are out there on the middle way. Things exist, just not the way you think they do. If you get to the root of that, then you can stop all your suffering, because all your suffering is in fact created by thinking that things exist out there coming at you. So start with chairs, computers, cars. You can move the people. You know, your irritating person is a good one. Then you move to yourself. You know, like self's hard, but I find that easier because, you know, I try to find the you that's there. You know, we have a name for ourselves, Mark. But where's Mark? Am I my body, my mind, my one, my many? You know, where is that thing that I call Mark? Where, you know, it's a concept. You know, I have a body. Mark has a body and Mark has a mind. But where is Mark? You know, you can't find that third party. You can't locate him. You know, he's a concept. But there is a Mark here, of course. That's the thing. You know, there is a Mark. It functions. It works. I can get up. I could talk. I could brush my teeth. I can eat food. You know, I can have a conversation. You know, so Mark is the conceptual synthesis of my mind and my body, and then I glue those parts together, and that's Mark. But because that's not fixed and that's not hardwired, it's infinitely changeable. And you can become a Buddha because of that fact. And that's the part that they say part of one of they call Buddha nature. I know I said this before, but part of yourself that's going to be the same when you become enlightened is that part of you, is the fact that you're not hardwired, suffering. That'll be the same when you become Buddha. It'll be the fact that you're not a Buddha from your own side either. So right now you're not hardwired, and neither then will you be hardwired. You're just coming from your karma by how you're taking care of other people or not. So yeah, try that meditation. Try sitting with that and just like, you know, every day, like looking at stuff and being like, okay, one or many, you know, pick it apart.
There was an article, it was in the New York Times a few weeks ago. It was about